school each Sunday night. I'd watch the practice with none of my friends. I'd turn the dial to ABC to see the creep of the week that Bobby Donald defends. But I'm out of practice.
With your hosts, Keith Varney.
Out of practice.
And Mike and Deglio.
Way back in high school, most every night, my mom watched QVC, so I missed the practice. There was no TiVo, what could I do? Wait 15 years, get fat, then stream it on Hulu. Out of practice.
Twigs, this is why I can't play Xbox right now. I'm podcasting.
I mean, he's 4 years old, folks. 4 years old.
Out of practice.
And welcome to the Out of Practice Podcast, a weekly podcast in which we discuss David E. Kelley's award-winning series, The Practice. I am here talking to you about Season 6, Episode 5, Vanished, Part 2, and I just sent a proof of life video to my good friend Derek, who texted me while the intro was playing, "Hey, do you want to play Xbox?" And this is proof that I'm not blowing him off.
Well, one fruitless endeavor for another.
Truly, yeah. I mean, certainly it is an equal value of time.
Yeah.
For, words. Oh, God, words. I'm tired. I don't know what's
Keith,
happening.
We promised the people today was going to be a better day than last week.
Did we?
So,
well,
yes,
I mean,
I did.
To be clear, yeah, you promised that you would be better. I made no promises whatsoever. I, frankly, could be much, much worse. And, nobody could fault me because I made no promises. I bring the same mediocrity every single week.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So how's it going, Mike?
It's going well. It's been a week as always. We're here on the weekend. It was an evening. I had my brother and good friend Ron over for WrestleMania, which we will discuss a little bit later, Keith.
Oh, are we going to discuss it? Okay.
Yeah, we are. We are going to discuss it. This morning, Jen went out to Long Island to see her family. She's, I guess
nice.
It's official now, so I can say she's going to be doing and actually you can speak to your wife as well. Our wives are taking the first step out of pandemic. They both have gigs coming up. So in person, like with people, live performances.
Yeah,
so
is she doing on the steps of the gig? Is that
she's
official?
She's doing on the steps of the gig in a bizarre, once again, things syncing up with the podcast. We joked all episode about Into the Woods last episode. And Jen just booked it. She's going to go out and sing the show, one of Sondheim's masterpieces, as Cinderella in Ridgefield, Connecticut, performing to 50% occupancy at either the Ridgefield Symphonic or the Ridgefield Playhouse, something like that. I don't know that I'm going to go, but I'm going to maybe think about it.
Well, wherever it is, Connecticut, Ridgefield, some combination of the sort. Congratulations, Jen. Woo. You will be magnificent in that role. Like that, she is going to crush it. I mean, goodness gracious, what a voice to do that role. So that's exciting.
So anyway, she's going to do that. She hasn't left yet, but she's going to see her family before she goes off to do it, yada, yada. So I'm home alone. I've got to fend for myself.
Wow. You might have to get your own snacks so that you can eat loudly on air.
So I just started playing PlayStation. I actually, Keith, this week had a very long text thread with friend of the show, Phoenix Cage.
Did you?
Yeah, he got himself a Quest 2 virtual headset. VR.
Oh, interesting.
And so we were going back and forth about so many topics: video games, microdosing LSD, depression, all kinds of stuff.
I mean, we have that text conversation every day minus the LSD.
Yes, that's very, very true. He discussed his. I just talked about a little bit about the vaccine. He talked a little bit about. I don't really want to share. I'm not sure it's all sanctioned, but he's got a really crazy kind of immune system. He was talking about how morning, weekend. What is it called when you get put under for surgery? Anesthesia.
Anesthesia. Wait, I should have just let you.
Yeah, that was going down bad. He doesn't respond well to it. He is one of those people who, well, I'll let him write on YouTube and I won't just talk about our text thread on the air. But anyway, it was nice to chat with a friend of the show, and that's what's been going on. What's going on in your neck of the woods?
Oh boy, well, it's a rainy Sunday. Charlie is sitting in his room. We call it his room now, the window well, and he's protected from the rain, so he doesn't even know that it's raining, except for his roof is wet.
Is there a bumper you want to pull?
Sorry.
Real quick.
We have tried for years to make this podcast a success.
We failed.
It's time to give the world what it wants. Meow, meow. Hot cat content. Meow, meow. Hot cat content. Meow, meow. Hot cat content.
Woo! What a banger.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I realized I completely ripped off Go the Distance.
Oh my God, that's exactly what I was thinking. I did want to say it out loud to encourage Disney to come after us, but no.
I didn't mean to. I realized it soon after that. I literally just
homage.
Right. We're gonna go the distance with cat content.
I actually couldn't place the tune, so I'm glad you mentioned it.
Well, it's not the chorus. It's the verse.
I have often found. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's really
I mean, it's just 4-5-1.
3 notes of 7, buddy. 3 notes of 7.
It's 4-5-1. That's it. I mean, when you're writing a jingle, you're not like going on like
enough
super
of this. Talk to me
expansive.
about Charlie. Is he happy? Is he comfortable? What is rain?
Well, Charlie's perfectly happy. Although he does, we do have a new nightly excitement. And that is, there is a local cat, a big fat orange cat that now every night terrorizes Charlie by sitting under the bush in front of our house next to Charlie's room. And Charlie's like, what the fuck, dude? You're on my property. Get out of here. And he just sort of like bangs his tail against the window until I go out the front door and I'm like, dude, I love all cats. I wish you could come in here and be my friend, but right now you're bugging the shit out of my cat. So please go to the next bush. So that is a nightly thing. We have to deal with the orange cat bothering Charlie.
Yeah, we got a couple out our window too that the cats are mesmerized by. This is the only time my cats are nice to each other is when the nutball cats are out and they have to like be a team.
Well, and I wasn't quite sure because Charlie he gets so excited when there's a cat, and I wasn't sure, like, do they want to be friends? Do they want to eat the cat? What's going on? I looked it up online, and unfortunately, it is sort of like a territorial thing, and
I think they want to either fight or bang. I think that's the only thing cats really.
Yeah, like it's
thinking about.
It is like sort of stressful for them to deal with neighborhood cats. So, which is why I, welcome the cat to go to the next.
Glad we're on top of it.
Yeah, no, we are totally on it here with Cat Dads here on the Out of Practice podcast. All right, well, let's move forward.
Oh, we're just okay. Yeah, we should do a show.
Let's do a show. Every once in a while, we should talk about ourselves for only like 90 minutes out of our 2-hour show, as opposed to more than that. And let's do a little segment we call
Filings and Subpoenas. Filings and Subpoenas. Filings and Subpoenas. Filings and Subpoenas.
You know, it almost sounds like you're saying filings and some penis.
Maybe I am.
Yo, I defended you. I want you to know.
Did you?
It wasn't an argument, but it like almost turned into an argument.
Oh no.
Spoiler alert, Keith's going to sing something for us, brief little piece, a little bit later in the show. Now, Keith has very good operatic, plosive diction. So it's very clear to me what he's saying.
Okay.
In fact, I'm going to spoil it. What Keith is saying is, what's my motherfucking name?
Yes.
Okay.
What is my motherfucking name? Yes.
But Jen kept saying...
There are no contractions in opera.
Jen kept saying, why is he saying, what's my mother's fucking name? And I was like, well, he's not saying that. She's like, yes, he is. So, Keith, we played that back 10 times. And I was like, he's just given you that F. Come on. Finally, I let the record show, I won because, I was right. But I want you to know we went back and forth with it quite a bit. She was like, "What? He's saying mother's fucking name." And I was like, he's not saying that. I know what he's saying because I told him what to say.
Yeah, no. I mean, I totally get it because when you're, especially in opera diction, your objective is to sort of blend all of the words together. Mm-hmm. So you're not saying, what is my motherfucking name? It's what is my motherfucking name? And so you're sort of, it is intentionally sort of mixed up together. So I totally get it. I tell you what, when you said that, I was like, oh God. So here's a window into my neurotic brain, folks. So please enjoy this little peek into my sad neurotic brain. So last week, I made the joke, parroting Children Will Listen, and I said children will decompose because we were making a... and for the entire week, and I'm like, oh God, that's so dark. And like, it's a joke that would be perfectly appropriate in our Murder, She Wrote parody, which will be coming someday when the pandemic is done to an off-Broadway theater near off-Broadway. Where it's the type of joke that would be perfectly appropriate there. But I'm like, oh boy, that's really dark in this context, in a more like serious context. I'm like, oh God, what if somebody's gone through that and I'm a monster and I'm a terrible person? So I thought for a second, oh God, Jen was like, that guy's a monster. That is that cheap, dark joke that I just threw out in the middle of nowhere.
Could have
without
ruined what a
it.
blossoming friendship that is just really...
I honestly, Jen, I believe our friendship has blossomed. Thank you. But yes. Yeah, that's anyway, that is the window into my neurotic brain. Let's hear from some of the neurotic brains of our friends and listeners. All right, so on the YouTubes, moderator Phoenix Cage wrote, and again, this is 2 episodes back, so we are commenting on season 6, episode 3, Liar's Poker. And he said, Keith, I'm surprised you mentioned the lawyer played by Richard Cox without citing any of his credits. Not even that he played Kirill Finn, the terrorist who abducted Dr. Crusher in the very political episode of TNG. Yes, I guess I didn't. I wrote it down, but I didn't mention it. And Mike, you were even more derelict in your duty, and you let the name Richard Cox go by without making any dick jokes, and that was our sexy episode, folks.
Yeah, that's true. That's a double zing.
I mean, Dick Cox during our sexy episode, and you did nothing.
Some would say I blew it. In fact, I think Phoenix said that. I think I just stole that joke, but it's my podcast.
I was trying to force like a foresight foreskin joke, but it didn't happen. It's too early in the morning. Anyway, Phoenix continued to say, "I can't believe
it's noon."
Shut up. I'm not having a great weekend, folks. Phoenix continued to say, "I can't believe you guys couldn't guess my favorite Van Damme film. You couldn't
believe it. He couldn't believe that we couldn't guess his favorite Van Damme film."
Well, there's a logic to it. Okay. He says, you even named it last week when reading the guest credits. And Keith, no, not Kick Puncher. That was the fictional B-movie series that Troy and Abed watched in Community. And actually, yes, I know, I made that joke on purpose.
God, Community is so good. So good.
And yeah, it's amazing. But of course, he was talking about Time Cop. Time Cop, which certainly was one of my favorites. I remember renting it on VHS with me and my buddies, and there was there was that scene with what's his name, the guy from Boston Public, having his like that sort of like dirty VR, and I was like, when I was 13, I was like, yeah, that's amazing. All right, not funny.
If only I was going to do a podcast about Boston Public.
If only.
No. I'm thinking different show. Denny Crane is Boston Legal.
Boston Legal.
Yeah, totally different.
We're gonna get there. We might get there. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Unless we end up doing the Ally McBeal reboot, which we're not going to do.
There's an Ally McBeal reboot?
We literally talked about it on air like 2 episodes ago. That there was some rumors that there was going to be an Ally McBeal.
Oh yeah, no, I don't even remember you reminding me. Jogging no memory.
Amazing. So continuing on, we actually got tagged this morning. It's not quite a filing and subpoena because it wasn't directly to us, but founding sponsor Jorge Navoa posted something fascinating on Instagram. And that was, he's watching an old episode of The Practice, where the episode where they find the head in the bag. Remember from way back, I think it was season 2.
2?
And he said he was watching that episode and started getting ads for bags. He says, I'd like to thank Instagram for eavesdropping on an old episode of The Practice I had on promptly suggesting a bag better suited for my head carrying needs. That is the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. And I don't mean the decapitated head in a bag. That's not the scary part. Scary part is the algorithm. Our phones are listening to us. That is terrifying.
Brief aside, stop me if you've heard this one, but Jen one time was planning a bachelor party for her buddy Jeff, and used my Amazon Prime, and so for weeks I was getting advertisements for gummy bear dicks.
Yeah. Well, at least that makes a little bit more sense. Like you actually typed it into the internet. I assume anything I type into the internet, my mom reads. But like, this was like literally listening through his phone. That's just, that's grim. Well, look, if you would like to tell us what the internet has been listening to in your life, you can reach us at outofpracticepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media at Out of Practice Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, or you can leave a comment right below here on the YouTubes. We all will be grateful to hear from you. And while we're talking about hearing from us, you can do us a giant favor and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other streaming service of your choice. Just let us know. We will happily read your comments. It doesn't have to be 5 stars. It can be 1 star and you say we're garbage. Doesn't matter. We welcome you to the jury because you are a jury of our peers, and most of our peers don't like us. That's what's we accept that. We've integrated that into our life experience, and we would be very grateful if you did that. Now, moving forward, Mike has a lot to say, possibly about what he was watching last night in our loudest segment, entitled
Keith's not wrong. We haven't done more TV in a little while, so I thought we would discuss some of what we've been watching outside of The Practice. And now that I'm fully into the Hulu, I am tempted every time I pull up the Hulu screen to watch The Practice without you, Keith.
How dare you, sir?
But Jen, every time gets...
Am I going to get to see you talk? I'm just looking at the More TV logo.
Uh-oh. No, it definitely swapped.
Have you got me on the preview?
I didn't think so. No,
I mean, I made a beautiful logo here. I cut out all the pictures, put them into the TV screens. I even put a little Gaussian blur to make it more realistic. Oh, there we go. Hey, Mike.
I'm here. I think that was only for you. I think, but that's okay. No one will have heard that because I will have cut it all out of the edit.
No,
sometimes I get antsy since we're ahead. Anyway, here's what I was saying. We're watching a lot of the screens. Jen gets viscerally mad at me every time I threaten to watch The Practice without Keith.
How dare you, sir?
So I've picked a selection of things. I've been watching a lot of things, but I've just picked a selection I'd like to discuss. I'd like to begin with a little something we both watched, so you can enjoy, Keith. That's not it. Where did I just put it? Uh-oh. Oh, boy. Things were going so well. Here we go. The first thing I want to discuss, stalling is a little show, an event we like to call WrestleMania.
Yes.
Night one. Now, me and Keith, we've discussed this. I used to watch wrestling a lot as a kid. We watched it in the 80s, the Hulk Hogan era. Then we got really back into it, my brother and I, in the 90s Attitude era. Then my brother went through a whole process of coming up in the minor leagues, if you will, and working with the Wild Samoans and being a trainer for WWE and appearing in some dark matches and then aborting mission and becoming a principal. But he's still really invested in the business, and so I like to watch with him because you get a lot of fun stories, and you get a lot. We talk a lot about the psychology and stuff. But at the end of the day, it really is just like fake, pretend, beat 'em up wrestling action figures. That's really what it is, but live. This held a little bit more significance because it's one of the major. MLB is having audiences come back. The NFL did it relatively successfully. The Super Bowl this is in the same stadium as the Super Bowl. This was the first time in a year, a month, and a day that there was live wrestling fans. They had, I think, like 15,000 people there. It felt full. It was pouring rain, but they did it anyway. And it was kind of cool. I mean, I don't really follow the product anymore, so I didn't really know what was happening or who was what. But I thought it was neat to see how excited the performers were. It was very indicative, I think, how we'll all feel when we get back to work.
Yeah, sure.
And so that was cool. And I thought the event was neat. It's hard not to watch and think in the back of your mind, like, who's wearing a mask? Look, those people aren't wearing a mask. Oh, it's outside. It's it's Florida. Sure.
Yeah, right.
But you have even less context of contemporary wrestling. So what were your feelings?
Well, I watched part of it, and it's interesting. I've sort of got interested in that world through a couple of documentaries that I watched, mainly about the 80s and 90s era wrestling folks. And I got really sucked in by Mick Foley. And his, because he, as a person, is a very interesting, intelligent guy.
His book is great too.
I read his book, and watched, a lot of the stuff that he does, and then watching this incredibly compassionate, interesting, kind guy go out and just get blown up in Japan, and just horrible things happening to him. And that is sort of his life, and the sort of mixture between reality and fantasy. And especially in that era, watching WrestleMania last night, it was oh, this is sort of like the kid version of it, where it's more silly than anything else. And it's remarkably good, stage combat.
Yeah.
But there's no reality to it, really. The characters are so silly, and the whole setup is so kind of ridiculous. It doesn't mean it's not entertaining, and it doesn't mean that it's not a remarkable display of talent. But it's not quite the same thing as what the era that I got obsessed with the Dark Side of the Ring. As well. Fantastic documentary series. And I don't give a shit about professional wrestling, but I really like the theatricality of it, and the blending of fake and real, and these people and their relationships behind the scenes. I find very fascinating. Because you have especially back in the kayfabe era, where they were pretending that it was real. You had these people who are good friends in real life, who would go out there and beat each other to death with steel chairs and barbed wire and bleed and knock their teeth out. And then they'd, go out to dinner afterwards, but they had to hide it because they were, one was the heel, one was the baby face. They weren't allowed to talk to each other. So I don't know, like the whole artifice of it all is fascinating. And then of course you have like the real life and fake supervillain of the McMahons.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting because it's one of those things where, especially the theatricality is that, a lot of the times there are people there are men, women who are very good at this craft. And that's not just doing moves and being charismatic. That's also selling it when you're getting your ass beat. But really, that's mostly you doing the work. And like last night, there was a performer, Bad Bunny, who is apparently a musician that I was not really aware of.
Giant musician, but
I know, international superstar. But I'm an asshole and didn't know that. I don't pay attention, I guess. And he obviously is not a wrestler, but they made him look like he knew what he was doing. And that's just a tribute to those guys. Another thing I've always found fascinating, we're going to get off this topic quickly, don't worry, is you talked about kayfabe, and there was one character who just kind of retired, The Undertaker, after 30 plus years.
Right.
And that's a guy who was so committed to what he did, his character, that he stayed in character for 30 plus years. You never saw an interview with him out of character. You never saw him out of character. He had no social media presence. I mean, talk about just commitment. And there's many guys who are like that. Another thing I'll say about the WWE, whether you're interested about it or not, they do promotional packages better than any sport, the NFL Network, anything. Their media team is flawless. The hype packages they put together are insane. What they can do. In fact, I find that to be really impressive.
It is its own very unique art form.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing is this fascinating art form, and I don't know. Like I find like the people who follow it are interesting, and why they follow it, and all the different ways you can follow it.
The passion about a fake thing they have. You're right. It's hard to explain. It's like watching carnies work. It's very
and you know what? I think that's exactly what it is. It's very much a carnival sort of atmosphere.
Yes,
and it's I don't know. I wrote it off. I blew it off as just nonsense my entire life. But I don't care. Like the actual product, I don't find that interesting. But behind the scenes and how it's created and what that world is, I do find a little fascinating. So anyway, good docs to watch. What's that famous? Beyond the Mat.
Dark Side of the Ring is a docuseries you might be interested in. I think it's on Hulu.
It is on Hulu. Yeah.
And there's Mick Foley's book is called
Have a Nice Day.
Have a Nice Day. That's worth a read. So start there. And if you can get a free trial for Peacock and check out Night 2. Night 2 is going to be even bigger than Night 1. And you get to see one of their coolest new characters who's sort of like the new Undertaker. His name is The Fiend. He's this devil character. He's played by the guy Bray Wyatt, and it's pretty cool what they got with him. So it's worth checking that out. And
character, again, if you're not in this world, you probably skip through this, but like character is the right word for that, because again, the guy who I'm obsessed with, Mick Foley, had 3 completely different major characters that he played throughout his career that we were, as the audience, were supposed to accept were not the same person. And we're not, and of course, like, so we're supposed to think that Mankind and Cactus Jack and Dude Love are 3 completely different people. And yet there's also this little wink where he had a night where he played all 3 characters in the same night.
Well, they eventually, like when we got into the more contemporary era where it was, they called smarks, where people were sort of in on it. There was no more kayfabe. They sort of tried a storyline where he had a fractured personality, where he was all 3. But then, like Kane used to be this burnt brother of the Undertaker. The thing is that it's like when they just replace characters on TV, you just kind of go with it. Your suspension of disbelief is assumed.
No, it's basically Grey's Anatomy with fake fighting.
Yeah, that's this most strained analogy maybe ever used.
But it's totally true. Like they go on forever and ever. It's a soap opera. They're constantly changing people out.
You see how Keith came back to wrestling. He left and then came back. That segues perfectly into another return that I find pretty fascinating and I'd like to discuss with everyone.
Oh.
I used to love me some Law and Order SVU, but after many, many years of basically the same episode every time, Elliot Stabler and Olivia Benson parted ways. They were the partners that everybody loved to...
On SVU
to analyze their relationship and what made them each tick, and she was so methodical, and he was such a loose cannon, and eventually he just left. As Maloney left the show, they wrote Benson off the show, or Stabler off the show. He never really got any clarity as to what was happening, just that he kind of took off. Well, he's back, baby. There was a crossover event. You know we love a crossover event, Keith. A 2-episode crossover event on either show, because Maloney also is coming back to NBC with his own Law & Order spinoff, Law & Order Organized Crime. I wanted to watch it just because I love me the Elliot Stabler character. I just think it's so ridiculous. He's such a ridiculous character, this hard-boiled detective. But also, Maloney doesn't do anything that isn't 1,000% committed. So he makes it work for the most part. I mean, it's ridiculous. But what's awesome is that he didn't want to come back to... I did some reading. He didn't want to come back to Law & Order in the same sort of Law & Order archetype. He wanted something different. So what they're doing different with this Law & Order Organized Crime is a more serialized nature. And so for the first big bad, I believe it's an 8-episode arc. Our boy, Dylan McDermott, is playing like a mobbed up bad guy, but we get to know the bad guy's story. He's not just, I mean, he is totally a caricature, but it's a caricature with a backstory. And he is chewing the shit out of the scenery. It is... Oh, it is glorious. It is just everything we love about Dylan. It's like take Bobby Donnell, mix him into that crazy guy Dylan played in Hollywood, and then make him a mobster. And it is glorious. It's insane. It is, I don't know if I'm going to stick with it. I mean, I dropped back off of SVU after the crossover event because SVU is just still the same thing over and over again. But this has got enough different that it's cool. There's no dun-duns. We cut out the transition stingers.
Really?
Yeah, it's got a...
Because it's more serialized, obviously.
Yes. And the one thing that they're leaning heavily on that I hope they get away from now is something we mentioned on the practice early on that they got away from, is just the continual handheld. Like the shaky handheld all the time. I can't... Maybe it's because I'm old and have vertigo, but I just can't deal with it. So hopefully they get away from that.
You have Oldigo.
I have Oldigo. Okay, so one more thing on television. Oh, go ahead.
Wait. Before we move on from Law & Order, I have 2 things to say about that. One, I met our neighbors behind the house, and one of their son, I believe, is a writer on Law & Order. So I was
one?
like...
Or do they all work together?
On SVU.
Okay.
He's been a writer on SVU for a while. I'm like, hey, I wonder if he wrote Jillian's episode. But beyond that, I'm like, I've got a spec. So I went back and I read my SVU spec, which I never sent anywhere. So I might start catapulting it over the fence as we're going.
Yeah, I like it.
A spec for those listening is a script you write for a running show that they're not going to use. It's just sort of an example of how you can write. But beyond that, I completely realized I should go back to Filings and Subpoenas, but I think I can make this work. You said Dylan McDermott is back, baby. Well, our good friend Jorge Navoa, you mentioned, that comes from Leisure Suit Larry. He went back and he found the actual clip.
Yeah, baby.
So, thank you, Jorge, for finding the actual clip you were referencing there. And actually on that, oh God.
That's okay.
Phoenix said that Leisure Suit Larry was his first PC game. He played the original on pre-Windows IBM 386 in 88. I had a 386, don't you worry. But I only made it as far as Leisure Suit Larry 3. So anyway, it's all coming together. It's all coalescing.
All right. I love it. Yes, I love it. I if I can, or maybe Jorge we can pull together the video of, because you clicking on one of those little striped dildos and it jumping out, dancing across the screen really added some visual flair. Speaking of visual flair, nope, that's not a good segue. There's one more show on the television I'd like to talk about that is a little bit more grounded, let's say, than Law and Order and WrestleMania. And that
what,
is
more grounded than WrestleMania? What could that be?
That is a show called Breeders that I have been hearing people rave about, and I just hadn't. I'm not a parent, so I thought, oh, maybe, I don't know if it's going to hit me. Holy crap, is this show good? I hate to try to like conceptual or boil it down, but imagine, if you will, like a It's Always Sunny kind of vibe, but they're not terrible people. There is actual heart. It's got that British Office comedic sensibility. It's about these two parents, but they are not glorified in any way, shape, or form. He's got some rage issues. She's got they do some interesting things in that they have really realistic jobs. He sort of like works at a think tank. The wife here, she
an office maybe.
No, she works as a sound engineer. So you get to see like her working in really cool booths and doing sound work and Foley work for movies and stuff. It's awesome. And it's just sort of their trials and tribulations. I think there are 3 seasons, maybe just 2. I just started season 2. I'm binging through it. The episodes are heartfelt. It's black comedy at points. It deals with anxiety. It deals with parenthood. It's so many things. I hate to even try to limit it. I give this a hearty recommend. It's on FX, or you can catch up on Hulu, which is what I've been doing. Breeders is like my must-watch recommend for everybody.
Okay.
So yes, now I want to jump in, Keith. I got just a couple more things I want to talk about.
Oh my God.
This is a big segment. This is like its own podcast, but it's been piling up.
Whenever Mike says I have a more TV, I should like get a sandwich.
Yeah, it's a lot. I want to talk quickly because I could have my own podcast about this movie that's getting so much buzz, Promising Young Woman. Keith, have you seen it?
I have not.
It deals with the trauma of sexual assault, just sort of the general not believing victims, that whole thing, that's a cultural movement that's happening. That's what this movie sort of deals with. And so it's getting a lot of buzz and a lot of support from that community. And I totally think these are stories we need to hear, truths we need to face, all of that. My biggest issue is that I don't think the movie does the things it says it's going to do. It sort of pitches itself as this sort of like taken revenge fantasy of this woman who's going to go out and right some wrongs. Okay. And it never sort of becomes that, which would be okay if it sort of fooled you and then called an audible. And I just feel like it doesn't say the things it wants to say. And I don't know. Maybe I went in expecting the wrong movie, which is totally possible. It fell a little short for me, and that disappoints me because I really wanted it to scratch a certain itch or have a certain thing, but it fell a little short for me. But I'd be interested to hear anyone else's opinion, especially those who maybe read it a different way from me and really enjoyed it. And so I'd love to hear that side of the tale. Last 2 things. We've been talking about documentaries. I love me some docs. I watched some new music docs. Both are available on HBO or HBO Max. The Tina documentary and the David Bowie documentary, the last 5 years. The Tina documentary is awesome. It's so awesome. It's a story you think you know. It's pretty much that story, only now she's telling it, which is the thing that you kind of learn from this, is that we always frame her around Ike Turner, and she tried her whole life to get away from that, and that's all people want to effing talk about. And so she wanted to take the narrative back, and she wanted to tell it from her mouth, which is, I think, a power we took away from her, or the media took away from her, and so she reclaims it here. And I think it's awesome, and it's her way to sort of retire gracefully, because she's an old woman now, obviously cannot perform the way she had. She thought the Broadway musical was kind of going to be her swan song, but that sort of got neutered a little bit because, pandemic.
Right.
And so
it'll
this
be back.
Yes. This is a really good doc. The David Bowie doc, I love me some David Bowie. I love Lazarus. I love David Bowie. I think he would be disappointed in that it feels like a commercial. It feels like a commercial for his last album, which is maybe what it is. But it just felt it didn't work for me. And then finally, Keith, I watched another documentary that you kind of mentioned earlier when you mentioned going to getting that Van Damme movie. Where'd you get that movie?
What, Kick Puncher? I went. I got it from Showtime Video in Jericho, Vermont.
Wow, that's when they had independent movie rental chains, because they all became at one point the Blockbuster.
Yes, indeed.
And
not Vermont. Vermont
the irony
stayed
is not
independent.
lost on me that Netflix released the documentary The Last Blockbuster.
Right.
Let me tell you, this documentary, if you're a person of a certain age, in your 30s, I'd say 30s up probably, and you had the experience of like what a date was going to dinner and then to the Blockbuster to rent a movie to maybe hopefully make out.
Right.
Or if you were me and Keith, to just get some movies to watch.
Yeah.
This documentary scratches all the nostalgia itches, but it also has the tale to tell, which is an interesting tale, and you get to support this actual. All of the blockbusters got destroyed through just the natural progression of technology and the Netflix,
Right.
Except one. And we find out what happens. We count down their last days potentially. We hear from a bunch of celebrities like Keith's YouTube show that he'll be on, like a lot of talking heads and people who worked at Blockbusters and people who like have experiences. It's really just an breezy 90 minutes, just really awesome. It's like watching The Toys That Made Us. You know, it's got that kind of fun vibe.
Right.
Hearty recommend. Keith, that's all I've been watching. Not all I've been watching. That's a lot of what I've been watching.
Are you sure there isn't something else you could talk about?
I'm sure there are. I've been also watching this weird show called The Practice, which if only there were a podcast.
Do we talk about that? Although am I right, or is it like an urban legend? But didn't Blockbuster, the company, turn down an opportunity to purchase Netflix?
It gets discussed in this documentary. I'll let you watch.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, let us move forward to let's have another segment about the practice. But I promise I'll be a lot faster. But I have my very own, inspired by this week's Burlington, back in time, this week's Burlington Free Press. I did a deep dive and have a segment.
Oh, wait, whoa. No. Keith, that segment happens during This Day in the World, just so you know.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, so let's go to the basement.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, look, I'm okay, great. We'll do that then. So let's hop back into the time machine, back to October 21st, the year 2001, and discuss what happens
This day in the basement.
October 21st, 2001. I'll be brief. So we can jump to you, Keith, and get out of this quagmire of long show that I've begun. I just moved to New York, and I'm gonna just jump dates a little bit. I went to my first ever village Halloween parade at midnight on Halloween, which is the next week.
You had a Halloween parade in your town?
In New York City? Yes.
Oh, New York City. Oh, the village.
The village.
I see. All right. Okay. I forgot you were already there.
Which was really cool. I almost pulled the footage, but there's actually a documentary that got made about the village parade in 2001.
Interesting.
Because it was the first big thing, and it opens with the amazing Cresco, who was look him up. Who we actually talked about him on the show because we talked about a documentary that he was in, and it opens with him talking about how Halloween was actually invented way back in the day to fight off terrorists by putting all these scary costumes. It's a whole thing, and how this parade that people were gathering in mass for the first time since 9/11 really was a way to culturally combat and say that we weren't afraid. It's really kind of moving and powerful.
Interesting.
I was there. It was not that culturally significant to me. I found it to be kind of scary because I hadn't really been amongst that many people being drugged out of their minds.
Right.
In my
It was in the village. It was that village. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I was doing. So let's jump to you, Keith. I'm
How
interested.
interesting. All right. Yeah. Well, I feel like you should pull up some pictures from that. I bet that Halloween party was really something. All right.
Sure.
So in October 21st of 2001, here I am again. I have my emails. So here are some things that were happening. One, rehearsals continued for Transformations, which is coming out soon, forcing me to watch the Giants-Eagles game on tape delay, which at that point meant I put in a VHS cassette into my VCR, somehow set it up to tape Monday Night Football, and then watched it back later. Also that weekend, my buddies Nate and Greg showed up at my apartment in Rochester without warning. A surprise visit, which I do not like surprise visits.
Nobody does. Nobody loves a pop-in.
But he does. But that's what happened. So I don't remember that happening at all.
Especially when you already got a plan for the weekend. You're going to watch your game on tape delay. You got everything planned out.
Fuck you. I mean, no, it was so nice. I came all the way out to Rochester. It was like an 8-hour drive. It was incredibly sweet, but text the dude. We didn't have text at that point.
No, they could have called you collect, I guess.
They could have called me. The other thing that was happening was it was the beginning of the broadcasts of Star Trek Enterprise, which I had a hard time finding on TV in Rochester at that point because UPN wasn't a network and it was broadcast on UPN in Rochester. But I found UPN.
Was it that long ago?
It was 2001.
You serious?
Enterprise came out. That's right.
It feels like it was relatively recent.
Nope. It was 2020 years ago.
Wow.
Enterprise started. And I was able to finally find it this week because the UPN primetime shows were showed on an infomercial channel in Rochester. So I was finally able to watch it. And so I did a screenshot of the credits. The supervising sound editor was, of course, my Uncle Jim and my brother, Sean, who a friend of the pod, finally started getting credited for his work on Star Trek, despite the fact that he had done 6 or 7 years of Voyager before that, but had not joined the Union, so therefore was not credited.
You know, we haven't discussed on the episode, on the podcast, Keith, was Sean getting into the business correlated with your uncle, or is it just like a crazy coincidence? Oh,
no, very much so. It was definitely Jim moved to Vermont to sort of like half retire. And so at that point when they were doing Voyager, they were FedExing tapes like professional VHS, like the SVHS, whatever, like literally FedExing back and forth from Vermont to Los Angeles. And like waiting on like the tracking number to make sure they got there in time for the mix. It was like super stressful at that point. Editing in Burlington, and Jim, at that point was already sort of like, I want to sort of move on and retire a little bit. So Sean started taking up some of the work, and then worked his way up so that by the time Enterprise happened, Jim did the pilot and sort of established the world of the sound effects, and then mostly passed it off after Enterprise started. So Sean and Tommy and these other folks worked on it. Happily, by the time Enterprise happened, they were able to email the sound files back and forth. But yeah, no. So so it was literally, they built a studio in Jim's basement in Burlington, and then eventually Sean built his own studio. Moved out of poor Jim's basement, because when they started, especially with Voyager, Jim would work the day shift and Sean would then work the night shift. So Sean would be in the basement doing sound for Voyager overnight in Jim's basement. It was really quite something.
Before
Anyway,
we move on quickly, I want to just leave a little bit of a space to mention Star Trek. Shatner was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame last night. Let's roll the bumper.
He sure was. He sure was. Shatner in the WWF to me. WE now, I guess. It's been WWE for like 25 years, but I still think of it as WWF. The Hall of Fame. So there you go, Shat. All right, folks, it is now time for...
It's time for the Out of Practice Podcast's This Day in the World. The greatest hits, the biggest movies, headlines from Vermont, essential sports updates, and for some inexplicable reason, the weather from 20 years ago. Now back to Keith and Mike.
Before you start talking, let's just give a listen to the start of this.
What is my motherfucking...
We're hearing from our good friend Ja Rule singing with Jennifer Lopez on the #1 song, I'm Real, Murder Remix. The top movie this week was From Hell, the Johnny Depp Jack the Ripper movie, which I actually just recently watched. Anyway, dark movie. The local Burlington Free Press had two things. One was raid was hunt for Taliban secrets, because if you remember, we are now fully into the war in Afghanistan, which at this point, our understanding was like, maybe we've got like 6 weeks left.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. But we're going to take this, take out the Taliban, will be no problem, and that'll be the end of the wars. No. Anyway, so the other one, and this is going to kick off an exciting segment. The other headline in the Burlington Free Press was Murder Still Haunts Stowe and its police. This is Stowe, Vermont, which brings forth our famous segment.
Back in time. True crime.
Ooh. I get the hat this time, guys. In October of 1991, the town of Stowe, Vermont was shocked by a murder that tore through its idyllic image and changed the law in the state for all time. 28-year-old Patty Scoville was found raped and murdered after going for a bicycle ride. The police collected DNA from the scene, but it was of little use because in 1991, Vermont didn't routinely collect DNA from criminals and suspects and did not have a DNA database. The case went cold. In 1997, 6 years later, Patty's parents testified multiple times for the Vermont's House Judiciary Committee, leading Governor Howard Dean to sign a law establishing a DNA database and requiring samples from parolees. 3 years later, a DNA sample was collected from prison inmate Howard Godfrey. Because of a backlog in cataloging the DNA samples, it took another 5 years before a technician matched Godfrey's sample to the scene of Miss Scoville's killing. They cross-checked Godfrey's DNA from cigarette butts discarded by a now free 61-year-old Godfrey and confirmed it was him. In 2008, 17 years after the initial crime, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Wow.
Yeah, and Stowe, if you don't know, is like the bougiest, like it looks like a postcard, literally, and it's a little snotty about it. But I was looking in the murder history, and there was like only one other murder in Stowe between 1991 and today. It's crazy. But it did make DNA evidence a real thing, which is why on the practice we're still talking about DNA evidence as if it's like this new crazy thing, and because it kind of was. And I can't believe in 91 we weren't even taking it into account. So thank you.
That means outside of physical evidence, meaning eyewitness reports and fingerprints, right? That's really all they had to go on.
Yeah, fingerprints, boot prints, that kind of stuff. Blood, they sort of typed. It was like A positive or whatever, but it's crazy. So Anyway, yeah, so that was certainly courageous of her parents to push through this, and thank you, Dr. Howard Dean, Governor, for pushing that through. And now for a much more important and much more somber event. It's time for Sportsball.
On Monday Night Football, the Philadelphia Football Eagles and the New York Football Giants clashed in a titanic game at Giants Stadium. The Giants took a 9-0 lead into the half after 3 Morton Anderson field goals, but the Eagles took back the lead with a James Thrash touchdown from Donovan McNabb in the fourth quarter to make the score 10-9. The game only featured 453 yards of offense combined. In contemporaneous emails from the time, which I have now, old buddy Nate said that the Eagles would win. He was right. I described the Giants as having run a prevent offense. There it is.
Cool.
That's it. That's it.
I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
It's time to talk about the damn episode.
Finally, mercifully, I'm sorry for your skip thumbs. That must have been terrible. Please ice your thumbs. It is time to talk about the damn episode. This episode of The Practice, remember, is season 6, episode 5, entitled Vanished Part 2. It was written not by David E. Kelley. He's off writing something else this season. It was written by Gardner Stern, who last wrote on Liar's Poker, and directed by Dwayne Clark, who last directed We Hold These Truths. And there was only one more thing you have to suffer through before we get to the episode, and that is...
What is that supposed to mean?
What's your problem?
Is this what happens to women when you insert your penis?
What?
What does Mike think's gonna happen?
I can't turn my head to say what because I look like a
Now, what
walrus.
if he would have drank the curdled milk? Then what would have happened?
We love you, Keith.
I can't turn my head. I just become some sort of a...
You always choose
bulbous
walrus, which is interesting. It's a very...
Well,
I
it's...
could have a field day cycle.
My body shape sort of is a walrus, and if I turn... You know how they have those big fat necks with like jowls and like things? Oh, it's horrible.
When they fight each other, it's something. So listen, big pitches. This isn't as big as just what I want to see this episode. So you'll recall at the end of last episode, the body we've been trying to locate all episode through a civil trial and I guess like a guilt trip to a pedo to like guilt him into telling us. We locate the body potentially just walking down the hallway, just waiting for us.
He walks in.
Yeah, and a big twist, potentially, because we don't know for sure. So, last episode, we saw none of... Although I see Lucy down there. I forget to look for clues before, and I see Jimmy shoving a sandwich in his mouth. I'm just seeing this stuff right now. We didn't see any DA last week, right? Because we were in a civil proceeding. We didn't see Ron Livingston. We didn't see Helen McDread, whatever we settled on. So here's what I want to see, Keith, which we haven't seen before. You'll recall there's a little animosity between the offices right now because Lindsay got somewhat played by Ron Livingston. I want a full Avengers team up this episode.
Ooh, okay.
I want the DA's office and Bobby's office all doing investigative reporting to determine if this kid is the real kid. And that's what I want to see. I want to see a full team, kumbaya search for truth. That's what I want. And on
search for truth and justice.
Yep. And on top of that, Jimmy goes to his other cousin, who is the Sandwich King of Boston.
There we go.
To try to procure even more money because he's not done gambling, we find out. These are my ideas.
Okay. All right, there it is. We all need a sandwich, and you should probably grab one now before you listen on your podcasting service of choice to us watch the episode that has vanished, part 2. We'll see you back here on the YouTubes for the Oopsies.
Actually, I got a couple more TV shows I'd like to talk about.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
And we are back, baby.
Okay.
I'm the baby merchant. Tots are us. I give you all the service and no damn fuss. Give the baby merchant just a week or two.
Wow. This is a glorious moment from Cop Rock, folks.
Yes, give us a week or two. We'll have our baby for you, and that's where's my hat?
Oh no, somebody can see your hair. That guy looks so much like a younger Tom Bauer. If you tell me what episode, I don't think it is Tom Bauer, but that would be amazing if it were.
That is crazy, folks. What is also crazy is that the second half of the episode, you've heard us twice. Things were going so well, and we broke the episode and had to redo half of it, literally half of it. So that's why
Well,
we're
I
surly.
promise you, take 2 is going to be much worse than take 1.
Yes, we are surly. We are surly, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway.
Mike has 30 seconds to remember what just happened on the show.
Oh, man, I remember because we've done it 25 times.
Yeah.
Kidnap guy, pedo kidnap, Chad kid, he's back. We go all hands on deck. We're looking to make sure they take a DNA. It is him. They're getting the guy. The mom isn't going to be charged because she was just a patsy in this whole thing. But then it turns out her sister's like, no, she had a couple miscarriages and she kidnapped this bitch, but she got the deal anyway. And guess what? The mom goes okay with her. She's like, I'll never forget.
Someday, when we do a transcription of our episodes, the transcriptions of Mike has 30 seconds will be the best segment, period.
Keith, and in all of the hullabaloo, you are going to love this. You are going to absolutely love this. I forgot entirely to do the next bit, so
you're going to have to do it on the fly
spot.
in a segment we call...
Oh, no.
I'll count it out on my fingers.
Okay, you ready?
Ready.
Jimmy needs some lunch. His mom snatched him from the park. No one wins this week. There you go.
Yes. Okay. All right. That's pretty good. Jimmy's sandwich becomes a much bigger part of the episode in the HaikOOpsy, but pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah.
Maybe we should swap it. Maybe no one wins this week. His mom snatched him from the park. Jimmy needs some lunch.
Okay.
There you go. I feel better about that.
Okay. Well, there it is. HaikOOpsy, FlyKoopsy. That was HaikOOpsy on the fly. All right. Let us mercifully move forward to the world's most prestigious awards ceremony entitled...
Ladies and gentlemen, the Out of Practice podcast, in unofficial, unsolicited, unfactual association with David E. Kelly Productions, proudly present
Oopsie.
The Oopsies! Celebrating excellence in acting good, lawyering good, guesting good, and being Tom Brady. Not to mention, this is where we rate the episode and stuff. Now, here are your hosts, Keith and Mike.
What the hell are the Oopsies?
Well, Jackie, they're the fake awards ceremony that begins every week with the...
Most valuable.
Things were going really well. And then just, again, Bobby did some great stuff, but he only did for once, he actually did what his client wanted. Despite...
Right.
So that's to be commended. But, Helen checked all the boxes, right? She she did her due diligence to make sure that the story checked out for the most part. The DNA matched, and maybe she didn't do her due diligence. Rebecca was out there sleuthing. She got the deal. They got the... Yeah, I guess the due diligence part really does raise a red flag, because I was going to say they weren't given all the info from Bobby. They were kind of leaning on Bobby's office, but I guess they should have committed their own resources to that investigation. But at the same time, you can't really give it to Joanna Gleason because she got railroaded, really. So, I mean, Rebecca? She's the only one who actually uncovered the truth. She didn't have much agency in doing much about it, but she found it. I mean, she's the best detective for sure. I don't know, man. What do you think? I need some help.
Yeah. Well, let me just rule out some folks.
Okay. Yes.
Right. And let me start with the DA office in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
We are 5 episodes into season 6. And not once, but twice, we have now had innocent people pleading guilty to something they didn't do. And twice, they have given immunity to the person who did it. Twice.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first episode, they gave Dylan Baker's wife immunity when she was the murderer.
Yes.
They gave Patricia Wettig immunity when she was the kidnapper. And they have railroaded 2 innocent people into guilty pleas. The DA's office in Boston is a hot fucking mess right now. So no oopsies for you. I think you're right. Joanna Gleason did a good job, but she got railroaded. I think you eventually got to the right answer, and the right answer is Rebecca, because she at least added some truth to the equation, and didn't do anything immoral, such as allowing a guilty person to go to prison, or incompetent, such as allow a guilty person to get immunity. So I'm with you 100%. Rebecca, you are this week's MBL. All right, now it's time. Work out the kinks in your neck.
Already famous cause you've been on TV, getting a paycheck, or the first entry on your IMDb. Way to go, but you're the best guest
Wheels are falling off.
actor. You are the best guest actor. You are the best guest actor on the episode.
Oh, so many good guest actors. Both moms, though, I think are the bestest actresses. You know? Really? You really boil it down?
Yeah.
And I loved that subtle shift we talk about, but you know what? Last week you really lobbied for one-woman show and
Deirdre O'Connell.
And this week I think that last scene really was what I needed, was what I wanted. That rage, the monologuing of what she was feeling, what she was going through. She was great the whole episode through. And just the way she worked through that logic for us emotionally, I thought was worthy of the prestigious OOPSY Award.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. But for the sake of sakes, I'm going to complete the splitsy you were lobbying for and give my half to Patricia Wettig, because I thought they both gave excellent performances, which helped each other give excellent performances. Really, couple of powerhouse actresses. I would have liked to have seen them go at it even more. Mm-hmm. But congratulations to Patricia Wettig and Deirdre O'Connell for your Best Guest Actor Oopsies. Now it's time for...
You killed your podiatrist or blew the case, but you let a single tear run down your face. You're the best actor on the show.
God, everybody was good this week. Eugene, Steve Harris was great. Mike. I'm flustered, people. I'm flustered.
How's talking going? He's flustered. Mike is flustered.
I've really worked
Get him a
hard
sandwich.
to get shit working again this week, and it's all for nothing. It's all for nothing. Never do a Windows update, guys. Just don't do it. Just let your...
No.
You should still be on Windows 97.
Yeah. Let the Russians hack your computer.
Dylan was really great. Where's Kelly Williams, by the way?
Not in this episode.
Lisa Gay was great. Ron Livingston was great. It's not even Badaluco's episode. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even his episode. He was so good. I want to give him the oopsie again, but I feel like maybe Bobby earned more. Bobby did such great work with his clients and trying to... I got to give it to Badaluco again. I really think he was great.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that one like genuine apology scene from Michael was terrific. Everybody else just sort of served their function. They did a great job at it, but there wasn't really much acting involved. They were just sort of, oh, this is happening, exposition bots. Whereas Michael Badaluco really brought it. So yeah, this is 2 weeks in a row for Michael.
That's big time.
Congratulations on your back-to-back oopsies. Can you make it a throopsie next week? Stay tuned. We'll find out. You know who has done the throopsie and about 40 in a row?
The Tom Brady Award for being Tom Brady.
Let's pop on up last week's On the Steps of the Brady, which was just excellent. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. I feel like Brady would probably scream his way through a performance.
Absolutely. This week, it's a little dark, if I'm being honest.
Seems appropriate for today.
So I hope you can find a nice, good graphic of the side of a milk carton, Keith, because this week's winner of the Tom Brady Award for being Tom Brady is, have you seen Brady? Tom Brady?
Ooh, abducted Brady.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to see him. And back in the days, I guess for those of our younger viewer, when you were kidnapped, you didn't get to be on a TV show. They put your face on a milk carton.
Yeah. So every morning with breakfast, you thought about child abduction.
Yeah. And then you did a crossword puzzle on your Fruity Loops.
Exactly. Okay. Well, congratulations, abducted Brady, for the Tom Brady Award for being Tom Brady. Now it's time for...
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to announce how many spare tires this episode gets.
Do you smell toast? Do you smell burning electronics? That's just my computer melting. But thanks for joining us anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, despite having to watch it a bunch of times, pretend to be watching it for the first time so that I could deliver you the hot podcast content you adore, I still love this episode. As I mentioned to Keith, on one of the takes, I don't know if you got to hear this discussion.
You're pretending that we've done the second take yet, which we haven't.
I'm trying to live on a lot of planes of existence right now for your continuity, but you might not have heard this part of the conversation, so let's assume you didn't. What I love is when there are more questions than answers when done correctly, because sometimes puzzling those questions out in your head, going through the circular Ouroboros of logic, if you will, how would I respond? How should they respond? Is the fun. And sometimes the practice is firing on all cylinders when David E. Kelly has something else to work on for a week or two or three, okay? And that's where we are this week. The twists weren't about the twists, right? We were already trying to brain puzzle ourselves through, well, how should they respond? Should they try to work a deal with this guy? Why are they trying to protect Chad's adopted mom? Should they be getting her immunity? Yeah, well, that makes sense. Let me puzzle that through. That makes sense why they would do that. He wants to protect his mom. They saw this thing on TV. They're trying to do the right thing, introduce him to his guest. And then we get that added wrinkle at the end, and we start going, should they tell? Should they not tell? Who are they protecting? Is it important for them to have a relationship with their son by allowing this kidnapper to go free because she was the one who raised him? And then we still have to put this innocent man in prison, but is he innocent? We could have a whole conversation about whether our justice system, who our justice system is set up to protect. Is it the innocent? It sure isn't the guilty. It's pretty awesome. I love when all these questions are answered. And what I really find compelling about this particular episode is that we didn't have to sensationalize any of it. And still, and there are no good answers. We don't know if they did the right thing. Was there a right thing to be done? It's not always black and white. That gray area is where some great television exists. And I think everyone was operating as maybe not you would have or I would have acted. Although in this case, I think I probably would have followed similar logic to all the characters. But they were operating under their own self-interests and how they would at the time. I just felt, it felt very honest. It felt grounded. It felt compelling. It felt interesting. I really liked it, Keith, is what I'm getting at. I'm giving it 8.96 spare tires.
Whoa, 8.96. Bringing it. Yeah. Okay, so I have a few thoughts as always. First off, it wasn't his adopted mom; it was his abducted mom.
Yes,
that's what she should be called. So, what this episode I think really drove home for me, especially in the first 3 seasons, every single episode would end with our heroes sitting around feeling overwroughtly weird about their job. Like, I can't believe we do this. We're defending all these horrible people and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And we have this existential crisis that would happen literally every episode to the point where it got really annoying. And I thought this episode is actually where they should be doing that. Because in this episode, they chose to allow an innocent person to go to jail. Now, usually they are performing a function in our judicial system, and that is giving everybody, including monsters, a fair trial and a zealous defense, because that is the oath that they have taken, because that is how you protect justice, by fighting for everybody. But in this case, they did the opposite, and they actually knowingly allowed an innocent person to go to jail for 8 years for something they didn't commit. Now, the show kind of fudges it by, we know he's a child molester, so we don't feel that sorry for him. But imagine if he wasn't, right? And that is their job in the legal system, is not to think about that. You can't think about that. It's irrelevant. And I think if you really think about what our heroes did, now they can justify it by saying they were following their clients' orders, but I don't know if they necessarily have a right to do that, because what their clients want is their client was not either the plaintiff nor the defendant in this case, right? This was a case between the DA's office and this guy. It wasn't a civil case anymore. This was a criminal case. So their clients aren't even a party to this trial. So I'm not sure how they would ethically be allowed not to give the exculpatory evidence, other than they're not actually a part of this trial. Like, even Bobby's people aren't a part of this trial. So it seems like I don't know exactly what the rules are there, but it definitely was pretty icky. And if I don't know, if you're going to have the soul searching, what are we doing conversation, it's after this. And it's only the fact that we made this character a child molester that we're not like, oh my God, I can't believe what they just did.
But real quick, let me cut in. It's not double jeopardy type of situation, though. There's nothing to preclude Bobby and the team to pursue the DA post haste and be like, we have this new evidence, like we should go after her for kidnapping now. You could do that, right?
Well, no, they couldn't, because the DAs, the other half of this equation was how incompetent our DAs were by giving her immunity for practically nothing. I mean, they didn't even do any research, didn't do anything. Just like, yeah, sure, whatever, because we want this guy so bad. Again, they just terribly stupid work. So she's not prosecutable about this anymore. But at the very least, you don't have to send an innocent person to jail for 8 years. And doing it after the fact is, the burden of proof on an appeal is even higher. He has to prove his innocence, which is a very much more difficult thing to do than to prove somebody guilty. And it's just it's an ethical mess that they sort of got themselves into, and we kind of whitewashed. And that doesn't mean I didn't like it.
Right.
It was just an interesting situation here where we're all about like making Jimmy apologize for his moral failings, when frankly I think they did a much worse moral thing than what Jimmy did in this. And I don't remember, but I'll bet you $1 we pick up next episode as if it never even happened.
Yeah.
So
it feels like part 2 is as far as we're going to go.
I feel like that's as far as we're going to go. So
just like, didn't we sort of drop off with the wife who was like threatening to sue and all that, and then we didn't, like, first 2 episodes of the season, then we're like, okay, we're done with that now.
I feel we'll pick that up again, but I hope, because otherwise that'd be really weird. But yeah, it's
not unprecedented.
I don't know. It really was an interesting situation there that I would have liked the show to acknowledge a little bit more. Which I understand that they want to keep our heroes likable, but they kind of did them dirty by not addressing it more than they did. Because Bobby, to their credit, they did argue with the actual mother, like, you realize what you're doing, but is it really in her hands what happens there? And with all the ways that we've wiggled out of stuff, with all of like the corners we've cut and ways in which we've ethically, they were going to go around it anyway to, and another thing, like, they easily could have found a way to do it either through proper channels or improper channels. Like, this was just a really, and I get from their standpoint, they're trying to maintain the relationship of the kid and the parents, but is the kid so stupid? Like, is the kid incapable of realizing that, yes, I experienced her as my mother and I loved her and she was good to me, but not able to say, like, oh, she also kidnapped me? Doesn't he have feelings about having been kidnapped?
Yeah, and I think that's the part of that's another really interesting part of the story that we're not going to get to see, but it's television and we only have an hour, so
42 minutes, guys, 42 minutes.
So, we have all the time in the world, apparently. So apparently. I hear what you're saying, because ultimately it's like, I understand their point. Like, will we sacrifice any potential relationship with him if we let this woman, if we hold this woman accountable, right? However, you're still leaving your son, who you've already lost 18 years with, in the primary delusion.
Custody.
Well,
Right.
custody, yes, but delusion that this woman loves him and cares, and which she does in a weird way, but she's a criminal. It's so no one's really acting in good faith for him.
No, and isn't he eventually going to think that through and think like, oh my God, my parents not only left me with this woman, but also sent this other man to prison for something he didn't do, to like, yeah, I know that lady kidnapped me, but like, who are these people? Do I really want them to be my parents? Like, it's a short-term thinking with long-term consequences that I don't think they really thought through.
Well, put your number on it, and then there's one more thing I want to talk about before we outro.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to give it, I liked it. I wish that the twist, I wish he had arrived halfway through the previous episode, so we had more time to do this.
Yeah.
I think we spent a lot of time on trying to convict this guy that ended up all sort of being a red herring. So that's my thought. 7.83.
Oh, we really diverge on this one. The other thing, we didn't talk about in our summations there is where Jimmy's at. Like, I think it's cool. They're not retconning. I'm liking the back end of the Jimmy thing much better than the thing itself.
Right. Sure.
I just thought that was so ham-fisted, his whole rise to gambleaholic that we're learning about, and then the stealing of the money. And it does make sense why Eugene's behaving the way he is. What I do find interesting is that they've not set up prior to this that Jimmy and Eugene are real close, that this is the friendship of the firm. Yes, we get some of it, but it's not. If you were to ask me prior to this episode, who's best friends with Jimmy in the office? I'd probably have said Bobby, probably. Or Rebecca, and I could make a case for any of them.
For anybody, right?
They really double down on Eugene here, but now Jimmy does say he wants to apologize to everybody, but Eugene forbids him to do so. So we're not going to get a moment with Eugene. So it's really just going to be Jimmy and Eugene. Jimmy's whole thing is going to be cordoned off to just Eugene.
Right. So
can he really ever make amends for that behavior as an addict, or he's just gonna have to keep that one inside? He said he wanted to take accountability, and Eugene is not allowing him to do that.
Yeah. Well, and Eugene's point that if he were, that he puts, because he's put Bobby and Eugene in an ethically dubious standpoint where they have to lie for him.
Sure.
That he doesn't want. I understand you don't want to do that to everybody else,
right?
You know, like, you know, if I've committed a crime and I tell you about it, well, then I've fucked you over. You've got a tough decision to make.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we come back to a lot on the show, and it's part of it's TV and it's this show, is that we get real selective with our righteousness at times. I'm not excusing Jimmy, but let's not forget Eugene didn't give Bobby the silent treatment for weeks on end when Bobby made Eugene sit in the car and watch him drop a dead baby off at the church. We just drove away, and, you know, then again, maybe they went and got lunch, and that's how right after they dropped off the baby, they went and got a hoagie.
It's all about the sandwiches.
Yeah, so I guess
sandwiches are healing, guys.
Speaking of sandwiches, it's time.
All right, folks. Well, we all could use a sandwich. But you have gotten through, we haven't yet, but you have gotten through The Practice, Season 6, Episode 5, Vanished, Part 2. If you would like to join us in the conversation, you can email us at outofpracticepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Out of Practice Podcast. You can do us a huge favor and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other service of your choice. Let us know. We will read it and gratefully welcome you to the jury. This episode of the Out of Practice Podcast is brought to you by our founding sponsors, Jorge Navoa, CloudLover69, Leanne Wrights, Jennifer Masanova, and Kari Kuhn.
If you'd like to join them and help me upgrade my already upgraded computer, I don't know what else to do, to be honest.
It's like a space shuttle. I don't know why it keeps breaking.
You can do so by clicking on one of the two show notes, by leaving us a one-time donation or a monthly contribution. It's just a few dollars a week. A month? A month.
A month.
Folks, do me a big favor. Oh, with so much time. I really got through that. Did I miss something?
No, I think we did it.
Hey, listen, folks, here's what I want you to do. I want you to give us a big, hearty laser sounds, but then stop, because it didn't record. I'm going to need you to go back a couple of days later and say laser sounds again.
Laser sounds again.
Yeah. Bye.